Get any of that? None of that. Hi guys, I'm Amy. Welcome back to my channel. I have another reading wrap up for all of you. So I have quite the stack here, and this is the third time I think I've tried to film this. So we're just gonna do our best to get through it as quickly as possible because these books need to be chatted about. So if you're interested to see the books that I've read over the last couple weeks, then go ahead and keep on watching. I think we are going to chat about these books in the order in which I've read them, just because I decided to do it that way. The first of which is The Hen Who Dreamed She Could Fly by Soon-Mi Hwang and translated from the Korean by Chi Young Kim. And this is a Korean classic. And I heard about this book on Mei Cho's channel, in which she absolutely gushed about this book, and I promptly ran out and bought it and read it because it is a teeny tiny little thing and fell in love. This is an anthropomorphic story about a bunch of animals living on a farm and in a barn, the main character being an egg-laying hen named Sprout, who has never been out of her coop and wants nothing more than to have her freedom and the ability to raise one of her eggs as her own. And this is about what happens when she gets out of said coop, and this book just astounded me. For how little this book is, it packs a huge punch. This book discusses topics such as parenthood, grief, loss, sacrifice, dreams, hopes, etc., etc., etc. And this book, more than anything, it just has this fairy tale whimsical quality that is just very uplifting, despite the fact there are parts of this during this book while reading it that I sobbed, absolutely sobbed. And on another note, it also has these really, really beautiful drawings at the beginning of every chapter, but more than anything, this book ends in a way that just brings the whole story full circle. I cannot recommend it enough. You guys need to read it. It's a beautiful story, one that I will be going back to and putting into everyone's hands that I possibly can. The next book that I read is a book that I am so very happy to have added to my repertoire of books, because this is a book that I know I will reread again and again, because it's just one of those. It's one of those books, and that is I Captured the Castle by Dodie Smith. I've heard several booktubers chat about this book before, specifically Laura from Paperback Winter and April from Getting Hugo With It, in which they both very much enjoyed this story, especially Laura. And this is the story about the Mortmain family who is living in the English countryside in this crumbling English manor and are very poor and live a very eccentric lifestyle, you could say, in the sense that they have a stepmother who likes to be in touch with nature and a father who is an author who hasn't written anything in the course of the last 12 years or so. And you are reading and you're learning about all of this from the character Cassandra, who's 17 years old, and she's writing in her journals. And the main plot line to this story is that the heirs of the estate in which they rent this castle from show up. They're American, they are stepbrothers, and it's about these two families' relationships. And I adored Cassandra as a narrator. She's cheeky and observant and perceptive, and all this is simultaneously set against the backdrop of a person who is very self-aware and has these anxieties about the world and how the world sees her and her family. And I just related to Cassandra so much. I cannot recommend this story enough, guys. It is kind of a chunky book, but it reads so easily. I just adored it. I mean, there's no other word to describe how much I felt or how I felt about this book. It's just adoration. It was just so wonderful, and I hope to read more Dodie Smith in the future for sure. The third book I wanted to chat about is a book that I talked about a little bit in my mid-year book freakout tag, and that is All the Ever Afters by Danielle Teller. This is a new release this year that is the stepmother of Cinderella's side of the story, in which you don't see Cinderella throughout the story this entire time, but it's how Agnes, Cinderella's stepmother, comes to be who she is, how she is raised, and how she survives, and how she becomes Cinderella's stepmother. And this seems like there's not much to this story, but this story has so much depth to it. It's so atmospheric. Teller's language just really puts you in this medieval world, this feudal system in which it is not kind to most people, and especially to women, and how Agnes then manages to make a life for herself in which no one's rooting for her. I found this book just to be absolutely wonderful. It was definitely the most surprising read I've had this year. I cannot recommend it enough. It has stuck with me, and I will definitely be looking for more works from Danielle Teller because I believe this was her debut novel. I think she's written some nonfiction, but I picked this book up on a whim, and I'm so glad I did, but you guys definitely should pick it up as well. Unfortunately, I was not able to continue the trend of books that I was really enjoying, and even more unfortunate, this is a book that I was buddy reading with Olive from a book Olive, and it was also our first buddy read together. But the silver lining in all of this is she also DNF'd this book and really didn't like it, and that book is The Air Affair by Jasper Fforde. This is the first of the Thursday Next novels in which it is marketed that Thursday Next is a literary detective. This is an alternative world in London in 1985 in which there are vampires and extinct cloned pets and all these different special operative units within the government, one of which is Litera Tech, which is what Thursday Next is involved with, which has to do with crimes against literature and authors. It's very odd and hard to explain, and that's part of the reason why I really dislike this book. Every single chapter, this book got more ridiculous. There was more plot added to it. I did not know what I was getting into, and I don't think the book prepares you for it whatsoever. I might have been able to get through it though if it had not been for the fact that the villain in this story is a villain for the sake of being a villain. He just likes to be bad, and I just think that is such sloppy cop-out writing because I want characters with some depth to them, and I really found that none of the characters in this story did. I was only halfway through. The main plot point, I believe, to this book is that Jane Eyre gets kidnapped from her story and Thursday Next needs to find her, but I didn't even get to that point. It was a big miss for me, and unfortunately I will not be continuing on with this series. I also got around to reading a graphic memoir. This is the first graphic memoir I have ever read, and that is Fetch, How a Bad Dog Brought Me Home by Nicole J. George. And this is about Nicole's experience from the time that she gets her Shar-Pei Dachshund mix, Beja, who is a dog that never really figures out how to be potty trained, is never perceptive to new people, and is generally just getting picked on by other dogs no matter where they go. And it's about how both Beja and Nicole grow up and move from the Midwest to Portland. Nicole has questions about her sexuality and the relationships that she has throughout this time, and I really enjoyed the art style within this book. I really like black and white grayscale type artwork, but unfortunately for me this story just felt very choppy. You get flashbacks to when Nicole is younger, and I just found that those were very randomly placed for no rhyme or reason, but I also felt that the words in which where I was supposed to read them, where they were located within the panel, were just unclear. So I enjoyed the story, but I felt like it was a little bit more of a struggle to read it or feel like I was reading it in the way it was meant to be read. I always enjoy stories about puppies. Of course, I died at the end. I died at the end. I didn't die at the end. I cried at the end. But if you're interested in a memoir about a person and their relationship with their animal, it's worth giving it a shot. It's not terrible, but neither did I love it. And the next book I have to chat about is a book I've been meaning to read for so long because it is so very well loved here on BookTube, and for very good reason, and that is The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee. This book is a rip-roaring good time. I absolutely loved it. This is about an 18-year-old boy named Monty who's living in the 1700s and preparing to go on his grand tour, in which his best friend Percy, who he has a horrible crush on, and his younger sister Felicity is joining him. And things do not go as planned, and it involves pirates and gypsies and stolen items, and it's just so much fun. And this book never ceases to be fun, but what I think Lee did so very well and accomplished beautifully is that she discusses topics such as being a part of the LGBTQ community, in which it is not accepted and not at all okay in the society in which Monty lives, and feminism and racism in such a way that it's so palatable, but it really gets people to think and stop and realize that their experience is not like every other person's, and vice versa. So I cannot recommend this book enough. I cannot wait for the sequel, which is about Felicity, to come out in October. I read half of this book on audiobook for a road trip and then the other half in print form, and both were wonderful. So highly, highly recommend. If you need a good, fun summer read, pick this book up. It is just, it's too precious, too precious. The last book I have to chat with you guys about is a classic and a classic author that I absolutely adore, and that is Persuasion by Jane Austen. This was my first time reading Persuasion, and this book is about Anne Elliot, who comes from the Elliot family, which is very prideful and self-important, and Anne is nothing like the rest of her family. And this is all set on the basis that 9 years prior, Anne met and fell in love with Captain Frederick Wentworth, and they were engaged to one another, but Anne was persuaded by her family and a very loyal family friend, Lady Russell, to break off the engagement. But now, like I said, 9 years later, Anne and Wentworth end up in the same circle again, and this is about their relationship and how Anne is so very shy and concerned about how the other people see her, and how she still has feelings for Captain Wentworth, in which he is now also very successful and wealthy from the war. So I just adored being in a world created by Austen again. I love her characters. They're cheeky and smart and fun and witty, even though Anne is very at times subdued, but you just really feel this sense that she has this little spitfire within her, and I adored it. I cannot recommend anything by Jane Austen enough. I need to finish with the rest of her works, but this was a great little short one. I definitely recommend it. It's a very sweet story and has some wonderful quotes, as always, that have Jane Austen written all over them. Alrighty guys, there you have it. There are the books that I have read recently. Definitely a little bit all over the place, but that's the way I like it. It makes things exciting. But if you guys have read any of these books, please let me know what you thought, or good, bad, or otherwise, or if you're planning on reading any of these now. Seriously, always come back and tell me if you've read them. I do this so I get to talk to people about the books that I've read. But if you guys like this video, please like it, and if you loved it, please subscribe, and we will see you in my next video. Happy reading! Sorry about the phone ringing, but we're just gonna move ahead.